This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. After experiencing trauma, I went to therapy, and my therapist guided me through a difficult time in my life. They helped me understand what was happening and provided me with tools to cope and find my own strength and resilience. Their experience and compassion were invaluable and enabled me to rebuild my life and move forward. I strongly believe in the power of therapy to help people through difficult times. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/resilience. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/resilience or choose podcast, then notes on resilience during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
If you have a low trust organization and you treat your employees like commodities, let's say, that aren't just transactional, then those people aren't going to go out of their way to take care of you or the organization.
Hello, and welcome to Notes on Resilience. I'm your host, Manya Chilinsky. My guest today is Nate Amidon. He's the founder and CEO of Form 100 Consulting, a veteran-owned and veteran-staffed technology consulting firm that brings military leadership principles to software development organizations. We had a wonderful conversation about compassion and leadership, in the importance of caring about the humans that we are working with. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Nate, I'm so happy to be talking to you today. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
To get us started, what is one thing that you've done in any area of your life that you never thought you would do?
Well, I think starting and running a company was never on my radar. I had started my career as an Air Force pilot, so I flew C-17s, big cargo planes, and that was my main focus. And so I look back now, and I never would have run my own company really in the software technology space as well. So that for sure is one thing that I never thought I'd do.
Yes, especially with a military background.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes get asked from my pilot friends, I'm not an airline pilot. Like, do you love PowerPoints? Do you love office stuff? Do you like sitting at a computer? And in a lot of ways, yeah. So
Yes.
yeah, it's just a different world.
It is a very different world, and the pilots that I know personally do not want to sit at a desk, and they do not ever want to know what a PowerPoint is. So it is interesting that you've made that transition.
Yeah. Well, what I like about it is the problem solving aspect. I like after a while when you fly, it becomes kind of the same. A lot of times it's takeoffs, landings, a lot of time sitting at cruise. And so I like the challenge of constantly solving problems, trying to figure out solutions, work with people that I wouldn't, have normally met. I like that a lot too.
Right. Yes, and you don't want to have to be solving problems in the plane every time you take off for a flight.
Sometimes you have to solve problems, but those are usually not great things, right?
Exactly.
And so is it, someone would say like outcome for 10 minutes of sheer panic. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of the life of a pilot.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, great. Well, we are glad that you started your business because you think about things like why it is important to care about the people that you're working with. And to bubble that up just to the concept of compassion, which is something I think a lot about. Why is that important?
Yeah, so we really focus in on the process of software development. So which can be very technical, right? You're thinking about writing code and advances in technology and AI and all of these things. But ultimately it's a group of people solving problems. And we need people to be connected to the problems, to each other, so they can work together to actually move the ball. So, I mean, at the core, it's a people business, and comes to compassion, you have to feel connected to others. You have to feel connected to what you're doing to really get the best out of people.
Do you have an example from your experience of a time when really being aware of that made a difference?
Yeah, I think it's so important, especially in the software development space, which seems weird, but a lot of times you can't see what's going on in software development because the technology's on a computer somewhere or it's in someone's test environment. Like you can't walk the factory floor and see if there's a widget that's not progressing because it's kind of hidden in a way. And so you really rely on people and you rely on them to see problems and to seek out solutions and to find better ways to do things. And so I remember once talking to a lady who had been working at a company for a long time, and I was working as like a project manager in space, and yeah, I just started asking her about, how, where she grew up, where how many kids she had, what she likes to do on her free time. And she paused and almost got a little bit of emotional. And she's like, I've been at this company for a year and nobody's asked me any of these questions. Is if you don't care about the person, then that person doesn't feel connected. And when they don't feel connected, they're not invested. And so, she might not have gone out of her way to find problems or better ways to do things. She might not have been the one to speak up because she doesn't feel like anybody cared about her. And so that those types of personal relationships are what really makes high performing teams and high performing organizations. And I think it's lost a lot in the corporate world.
It does get lost a lot in the corporate world. Why do you think that is?
I think that I can't say for sure. I mean, I grew up in a military world. So I went to a military college, went to the Air Force Academy right out of high school, and then was with a military unit for 12 years. And and so I always just it was always embedded in the culture that we cared about people, right? I mean, like, because it's the person next to you is going to be a lot of ways watching your back, making sure you don't do something dangerous. And so you need to make sure that you know that person and that person has just kind of a basic level, feeling that we're all on the same team pushing towards something. So the private sector is a little bit different. It's more transactional. People are doing a job to get paid, as opposed to like in the military, it becomes a way of life. It's part of your identity. And so I think there's probably aspects from the top where it comes down to profit motives and you see record quarters, but then record layoffs at the same time. Like it's hard to square those two things when you think about a people first organization.
Yes, it's not hard. I feel like it's impossible when we see those kinds of activities. And of course, it's always easy to judge from the outside. But I'm curious, what kind of policies or structures or values do you think are really important to support leaders to be able to make those compassionate decisions and ask those personal questions?
A lot of the leadership, when people think about leadership, they'll think about the C-suite. Okay, they'll think about CEOs and CIOs and CFOs. And one thing I really loved about being in the military was they started talking about leadership at every level. And so I guess maybe to answer that question is to kind of frame that leadership isn't really just a title, it's a set of actions. Anyone can be a leader regardless of your title. Maybe that's a better way to say it. And so team level and program level leadership is so critical to doing anything, whether it's improving compassion in a culture or even just getting things done. And so I think your question was what organizational policies and structures like. I think it's being deliberate about leadership training and building that into a culture early on in the organization. Right. So I mean, there's so many first line managers, and those would be like, hey, they went from an individual contributor to all of a sudden now they're managing a team, and they just say, congratulations, you're now a manager.
Yes.
And there's zero training,
Right.
right? There's zero thought to how you should do it. And then there's zero mentorship. So there's not like a culture in a lot of these organizations of leadership at an early level, like leadership at the team level. And I think going back to the military example, I think from my experience, our military senior leaders, which would be kind of C-suite, were very deliberate about saying leadership happens at all levels. And so it was even embedded in how we got, our performance reports. We went to leadership training. I mean, I like to say every military officer, well, maybe not everyone. I went through 40 weeks of dedicated leadership training in my first, like, by the time I made 8 years of service. So, I mean, it was just a constant thing. It's there. I had mentors that talked about it. It was pretty much embedded in everything we talked about.
Right. That's so important. And that is different than a lot of other kinds of environments. I appreciated what you said about whatever level you are and whatever your title is, you have leadership responsibilities, you can be a leader. Early on in my corporate career, somebody told me every person in this meeting has a responsibility to the success of this meeting. And that really changed my thinking because before then, meetings had been, for a lot of us, oh, hey, here's an hour where I don't really have to work. And, but it really changed the nature of our meetings and how we got things done because everybody felt a responsibility. And so that's a similar thought that I've heard in the past to what you're saying is that we all have that responsibility. I'm not sure people, let me say it this way. In some organizations, I don't think people know that that's possible, or it might not even be possible the way the organization has structured itself.
Yeah, I would say it's at some level it's always possible. And a lot of what we do in our consulting practice is, well, we hire former military leaders and then we embed with software development programs to try to build a lot of these things and obviously do other things. But yeah, it really comes from, I think it does come from the leader though. The one that's assigned to be the leader, let's say that first line manager, like even if the organization is one that doesn't promote, isn't what you would call like a high trust environment or high trust culture, you can still do it at a micro level. And it really starts with the almost a sense of humility around, and I think this is probably the biggest thing I see in the private sector is a lot of times you think because you're designated as the manager or the leader that you have to have all the answers, right? Like you have to be the one to set the direction. You're responsible for telling everyone what to do. And it's a natural thing to have happen. Like I see you see this in the military too. It's not like the military is immune from this, like because at a micro level or at the team level, program level, you can see this everywhere. But I had a mentor in the Air Force once tell me, like, your job as a leader is care and feeding of your troops. It's one way to think. And it's like, you don't want to be the one that always, like, I never had all the answers. And so in leadership positions, I think as a leader, you're an idea radar. That's your job. Your job is to set the conditions so everyone will actually speak up and give their best ideas. And then you may have to make the decision on which direction to take, but everybody knows that if they had an idea or if they had a thought, if they had input, that it was received. And then you have to be okay with being wrong.
Hi, it's Manya. You're listening to Notes on Resilience, conversations about leadership, recovery, and how we show up in the difficult moments. If something here hits home, or if you're navigating a crisis, or you're seeing something in your team you want to talk through, I'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch at my website, manyachilinsky.com. Now, back to the episode. Yes, which can be hard for a lot of us sometimes. And you used a word that I think about a lot, the concept of trust. You talked about being in a high trust environment. And I think that might be the crux of it. Some organizations, for better or for worse, don't have a lot of trust and people don't feel safe necessarily. And it sounds like within your own organization, you really think about the concept of trust.
Yeah, you have to build trust with people. You have to build a relationship with people. So that means like they have to believe that you care about them
Yes.
and not just believe like you're faking it. Like you have to actually care
Right.
about people, like, and they have
Right.
to know it. And so and that kind of goes back to the care and feeding of your troops. Like you have to make sure that like you're looking out for them as a person, that you care, you hear about them, you hear about what their ambitions are, what's going on with them. It's kind of a whole person concept, which is different in the private sector because there's a lot of like, well, you talk about people's personal lives or other things, and there's a fine line there, and I get that. Um, but if people need to understand that and believe that you trust, that you believe in them, right? That you care about them, and then they trust you. If they trust you, then they'll come up with better ideas. They'll come up with better things. They'll go out of their way to help the organization because they want to help you.
Right. In my own working life, I've had experience both in organizations where I trusted and felt that I was also trusted, and in organizations where I couldn't trust leadership. And it was so much easier to be a contributor in the environment where I was trusted and I knew that people cared. And it doesn't mean spending half the day talking about what I did over the weekend, but it does mean that when something was going on, people noticed and checked in, and that made such a difference.
Yeah. We work in the software development space around agile practices and really trying to build, high performing teams. And one of the things we talk about a lot is psychological safety, and the idea that people need to feel safe saying something that might be wrong or might even be stupid. And that can be a really hard thing to actually build inside of a team. But it's so, so important. It's so important to give everybody that confidence that they can speak. If they have an idea or they see something, they should say something. And they should feel like they're part of the team to come up with the solution.
Right. And I always think of it as anybody can say something about any part of the project, even if it's not necessarily your purview. But if you see something wrong or confusing, that I want you to say something. Have you yourself experienced an environment where maybe your employees didn't feel safe or didn't feel that you were trusting them?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is the type of how to build that doesn't just happen.
Mhm.
And that's where it goes back to like kind of the leadership training and the mentorship. But it's at some level, you have to fail in this to know how to do it.
Yes.
I mean, I fail all the time at this type of thing. I actually have I remember once I was flying in a formation. So the C-17 is a huge airplane. And sometimes we fly in formation. So there's multiple huge airplanes together. And then
I'm
we
scared already, and I know that you're safe. So continue on.
and then we'll do air refueling with other huge airplanes. And so there can be moments where there's six airline size aircraft all within a couple of miles of each other, flying really close. And so how you coordinate and move your planes around to stay in formation and to get gas is really important. So I was flying with the new co-pilot, and he was excited about something on the plane that he found out or knew and told me about it. And I I had been flying for a long time at that point. And so, I mean, I kind of just roasted him in a very patronizing way. And what I didn't realize is at the time, I basically shut him down. Okay. And so, while I was flying, after in this formation, in this kind of exercise, I was supposed to turn to the left, and I ended up turning to the right. Now,
Oh,
that's
that
not
seems bad.
yeah. And so that puts you in a dangerous position where you could potentially hit another plane. And people make mistakes. And so as I was going, I was like, oh, something feels off. I caught it. I went back the other direction. And I looked over to the co-pilot and said, hey, did you know I turned in the wrong direction? And he's like, yeah, but I wasn't going to say anything. I mean, so that it just shows like how powerful that can be to like allow a potentially dangerous situation to occur just because he's mad that I made fun of him.
Right. And he didn't feel safe
Exactly.
telling you. Yes.
And so at that point it really hit that, like, look, this is super valuable. Now think about that on like a software development team. So you have an engineer who gets kind of yelled at by his manager or something, or harassed for whatever. It doesn't feel safe or supported, and he or she might see a huge issue that could cause the whole system to go down, and they may just say, "Fine, let it go.
Right. Not my problem.
Not my problem." Or, I know that's here, but they're not going to support me, so I'm not going to raise it, and they can figure it out themselves. And that can derail projects. This type of thing can be, if you're on the wrong side of this as a culture versus the right side of it, that's really the difference between high performing teams and dysfunctional teams.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that example. I think we can all
Yeah.
understand the level of trust that was going on there. And it was just so upsetting to hear that he knew and didn't say anything. And I can so see that. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and there's been a lot of aviation examples where
Yes.
the hierarchy of I'm the captain of the flight and no one else say anything, that is it's a very powerful feeling that shouldn't be ignored by any organization.
Right. Well, and I think that's an example that so many of us can just understand, even if we're not pilots and we don't understand, we can see the gravity of the decision and the need to be trusting and open and feeling that you can share. So most of us are not in that position. So we're just in regular organizations on the ground. But what is the biggest risk for organizations if we don't build that trust and that psychological safety?
I think it's kind of like what I said earlier. I think you'll see, if you have a low trust organization and you treat your employees like commodities, let's say, that aren't, that are just transactional, then those people aren't going to go out of their way to take care of you or the organization. I mean, you hear this a lot in customer service facing type businesses where it's like, well, you should take care of your employees because they're the ones taking care of your customers. I mean, it's the same thing. It's a more hidden thing, especially in the software domain that I'm in, because again, you can't see the widgets, you can't see the things. Things just happen to be delayed because of whatever reason. But I think that can be a symptom of just a low trust organization. And so and I guess the other thing to that I like to bring up a lot is like those micro decisions re, become macro results.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if it's just that one time that an engineer says something that happens to fix the one thing, it's like a total random neuron firing type of event,
Right.
right?
Right.
Those things though they can be the difference between a huge, like a catastrophic bug being released in production or not.
You said a word I think is so important, commodities. And I think there are still some organizations that the humans who work there are, for better or for worse, thought of as commodities versus humans with messy lives and who need to trust and feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I get that you're in a business environment and there's costs, and you have to make. I understand that the private sector organizations are there for a reason, right? But I think the more that as we get more technical, especially with the use of AI and rolling out, agents that can help automate a lot of the work that maybe people were doing in the past, we still have to remember that at the core we're a people organization, and the care and feeding of your people is going to be the best investment you can make for your business.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's a perfect way to end this. Other than I would love to for you to please share a little bit more about your work and what you do and how people can reach you.
Yeah. So my company's called Form 100 Consulting. We're really experts in the process of software development. So we aren't software engineers. We're experts in the stuff that surrounds it. So how do the teams work together, communicate? How do requirements get from an idea into something that engineers can work on? And then how do we drive alignment in the organization so leaders have the right information to make the right decisions? And so a lot of what we've been talking about kind of manifests in a lack of trust that can turn into a downward spiral where there's not clarity on what the engineering side is doing. And so then leaders are making different decisions. And so driving alignment and clarity is so important in any organization, but especially the more technical you are. And then using AI automation, helping clients build a strategy around AI that really isn't built to replace people, but to enhance and to make our lives better. So, a good pilot analogy would be like having autopilot on, right? That's an automation, that's an AI agent in a way that will fly straight and level for me so I can think about other things and making sure I turn in the right direction.
For example, random
For example.
example.
Yeah. Yeah, and people can reach me on LinkedIn is usually the easiest way.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'll include a link to your profile in the show notes. Nate, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. I really appreciate your sharing your insights with us.
Absolutely, mine. Really appreciate you having me.
And thank you to our listeners for checking out this episode, and we will see you next time.